Nobody can do it like me, like me, like me. Yeah, nobody can do it like me, like me, like me. Nobody can do it like me.
What is up, everybody? That music, man, gets me every time. What?
I was dancing. I was like, yeah.
It says we're sitting backstage, and I'm like, oh, no one can see me. Okay.
Right, nobody's seen it.
Well, I'm really excited. Welcome, everybody, to the premiere episode of the Jesslee Roadshow presented by Winject Studios with Black Label Nash. As you can tell, I have the beautiful Jesslee on board and on this call. We utilize platforms. Hello. Say hello real quick.
Hey.
And I have to also equally beautiful her manager, Steve Virginia. What is up, dude?
Hey, buddy, how are you? I feel like I should do something with my hair since you just said that. Like I should give it like a flip or something.
The next episode, get a fan and just blow it. Yeah, get a fan.
I do that on stage. I play guitar with Jesslee. I actually have a fan.
He does. He has a fan
for guitar solos.
And then
I'm not even kidding.
What's even more messed up is my whole band. They all have amazing hair. And then I have my hair. So like in my show, we actually ended up developing, which was a fan request, for people to do a hair flip competition in my show. So all my bandmates and I will stop and we'll literally do a hair flip competition. And I've lost.
You know who wins?
I can't. I don't have that problem. I can't enter this contest. I can judge it. We might be onto something. So guys, if you're listening to this, we might have someone on and do a contest and do a giveaway. And do a hair. I would be the judge.
You'd be the judge.
I'll be the judge for the hair flipping contest. I promise you.
I'm just telling you, the slow motion hair flip. She's got a vibe, right? It's more of like a Warrant cherry pie vibe.
It's kind of my thing. It became my thing because it was my first viral video.
It was. I've got a vibe, which is kind of like the post perm Bon Jovi vibe, you know, with the hair flip.
I thought you were going to say Post Malone. What is it?
Post Malone hair flip.
Dude, somebody actually said I looked like Post Malone the other day, and I didn't know whether I was offended or like whether I was really, really flattered because he's a bajillionaire. But
you were only flattered because of his money.
That's exactly right. I don't have any face tattoos.
Well, that's kind of, it's interesting. I'm just going to go with this. I'm not going to lean into this because that's actually interesting. The ones that are bazillionaires, they're always uncommon. Yeah. And they're very unique, and they are unapologetically them. And that's one of the reasons why I love Jesslee as much as I do, especially Steve. But is that when I had a chance to interview you when you came onto my show, The Win-Win Effect, it was, and of course, I wouldn't say that's my skill or my gift, but one of my things that I've done on my whole career is that I've never sold anything in my life, but I immerse myself so much into the other individual. Yeah. I feel what they feel, and I can, when I'm asking questions about their experiences in life, I'm able to relive that experience for them, but I'm looking with my perspective and say, hey, if I can remove this negative feeling or emotion away from what you have going on and drop something positive there and reinforce that and give you the tools to get out of, propel you out of the situation, then you're creating a lifelong, not just friend or a sale or a relationship. You're creating ambassadorship underneath you. And I love that about your message.
I like that you recognize that because it took a long time to get this way. And like, that's one of my big things is to push people to be unapologetically them because and we've talked about this before, but long story short, I come from abuse and that really did damage on my psyche and my ego and anything forever. And it was one of those things, it took a long time for me to love myself back to life. And then when I finally did, it was like, I am who I am, and like you're just gonna either like me or not,
Yeah. The thing that attracted me to Jesslee when I first met her as an artist was that she was unapologetically her, but that she was not the typical female that you saw in music, right? So she was the kind of woman that you could lean into as an inspiration for other young women, which is really hard to find nowadays, and just as human beings in general, because she's an advocate for human beings, and so. That kind of energy and that kind of vibe is really, really, really hard to find. And I've always tried to be that for people. When I was an artist, I tried to do that for people. Now as just a human being, I try and do that for people. But that's what initially attracted me to Jesslee was because she was unapologetically her. And that was what I thought was the most beautiful thing about her.
It's vibrant. And, when I speak energy fluently, and we all know my story, and I'm going to get into it, but I'm going to for the listeners, give a little bit more context. So, what I do for a living, me being an entrepreneur, I've been as an entrepreneur for 8 years, had massive success. I'm really great, and I love what I do for a living because I don't have to do what I do for a living. I get to do it. And how all this came about, it came from us having such an impactful conversation. And from that conversation, we're able to make that collective impact with all the listeners.
Yes.
And we had over like 200 and something thousand downloads just off of your one episode you came on, the Women Effect. And granted, I think it's a complete
powerful episode, man.
It was a complete reflection we took, and I put a lot of time and effort. I wouldn't say projects, but I put a lot of time and effort into people that I'm going to interview. Yeah. And I usually what I try to do is I listen to a lot of your previous episodes, your radio show stuff that you were doing, and people are asking you questions. And I noticed that they didn't ask the rebuttal questions to a lot of the things that you mentioned.
Yeah,
I was like, I'm gonna pull that out because I believe that we did that effortlessly. You made it easy for me to kind of pull out that story, and you're a true inspiration to a lot of younger girls. You're welcome. And I even shared my music, your music with, my nieces.
I know who I just love and adore now.
I know. So Blakely, Bella, Kennedy, if you're watching this, love you. So, and, thank you so much for all the, I guess the video that you sent my niece on her birthday. That was just such a wonderful thing. And I'm always going to be cherished that. And it comes from that conversation and how we felt when we held space together. And from there, I went on through my journey. I sold the 2 programs to trade schools. I got to the 8-figure type of numbers, phenomenal. But then I was like, okay, well, I was left with a really dope show. What do I do with my show? Then I had to outsource 7 different things to be able to have my show edited and show notes and whatnot. I reached out to a couple of people that, behind Tony Robbins and behind Dean and behind Brendan Burchard, Mark Casarubio, if you're listening to this, love you, bro. He started reaching out to a couple networks, and I thought about, okay, how can I apply my methodology of the win-win effect, an educational based where you're never selling anything? How can I apply this system that I have I believe that you can actually cultivate and put it with any business model out there and actually to manifest a radical transformation. Mm-hmm. So I started reaching out to these networks. Well, I've reached out to a couple of podcasting networks, and I did an audit. When I actually do an audit, they pay me $200,000 up front. Then that holds me there for me to do an audit. When I did that, I got access to how the system and how networks operate. Mm-hmm. And when I get pissed off, I create. And I noticed that it was set up very similar to the music industry. Mm-hmm. It takes you, it's kind of like legal loan sharking. I'm going to blow you up and I'm going to make you mainstream. Okay, but you need to cut your hair. You need to, dye your hair this way. You need to wear sexier clothes. I don't know. They're controlling the content for them. And they were doing the same thing in podcasting. Yeah. So a podcaster like myself or anybody that wants to grow their network or grow their listenership and brand awareness, they have to sign on to a network and they control everything for them. And they don't realize that all the big money to be played is all through sponsorships and they're raping you.
Yeah, that is just like the music industry.
It's exactly like the music industry.
That was, that's kind of become my mission, is like being able to stay me throughout this process.
100%. And
it's been a little bit of the more challenging route, but over time it's been showing that it's going to be the more rewarding route in the end, because my purpose has bloomed into so much more than just releasing great music, although that's what I love to do and that's a passion, and I think that's linked to my purpose. I think it's legitimately just a platform to something so much bigger. And I can't even tell you how terrifying it is to know that there's so many people out there who are just shells of themselves because these industries take them and strip everything that's unique away from them to create this robot character that is going to be mainstream and sell. And a lot of the times they don't even get anything out of it in the end. They really don't. They get this mainstream exposure, but it's so sad to know that some of these major label artists, I'm making more money than them. They're put on a salary. They're 100%. Doing all the hard work and they're putting all the time in, but they're on some salary, and it's a mess. So, I did not know that going into the music industry. And when I did find that out, it made my passion to do it differently so much stronger. And, I'm this right here is a concoction of everybody being themselves, everybody being uniquely who they are and adding what they are to the equation to co-create successfully. And that's what it takes. You literally will not be able to live your purpose if you are not being 100% you. And that's why and that's why a lot of these artists out here, they don't affect more than their bubble. They don't do greater things because they're not living true to their self and in alignment.
Right. Well, it's hard to think outside of your bubble when somebody is creating your bubble for you.
Absolutely.
Right?
100%. That's a really powerful point. And you've been and just to give a little bit more context of for the listeners on who Steve Virginia is, and I want them to actually really truly understand this.
Steve Virginia.
Yeah.
Sorry, I feel like I need that. Like every time we say Steve Virginia, there's got to be something that goes, song? Steve Virginia.
Dude, you should do a hair flip every time I say that. That was perfect. That was good. Hey, I scored that a 7. All right. So I'm a hard judge. I'm not even
gonna lie. That was like a 6.5.
Hey,
it is.
I had coffee in my hand, y'all. I didn't want to spit on my crotch.
It is what it is.
Slow-mo.
But was it?
Slow-mo would have been 8.5. 8.5 slow-mo.
So that's, and I just want to talk about it. We could do this all day because it's kind of funny is that we've, I would say in a very short amount of time. I'm Jesslee. We've been known each other for over a year now. I think.
Yeah, it's definitely been about a year and a half.
Yeah, something like that. And of course, and then the first time, and of course, I've had conversations with Steve, through email and through Teams and whatnot. But yes. Steve and I, very first time that we actually had a conversation was over a month and a half ago when we come up with this idea. So when I decided to buy out those 2 networks, I didn't want to build a podcasting network. I envisioned building a platform and a system and applying an educational approach to it, where it's Winject Studios, but you got Winject Radio, that's podcasting, Winject Music, and then Winject TV. So it all goes back into one. My methodology and my philosophy in business has always been one heartbeat, one mission, one outcome, because it stems all the way back to the word universe. So most people don't understand this. Let's break this root of the word. Uni means unite.
Yeah.
Okay. Union. Verse means it's obviously versatile or reverse. So quite literally means universe means all turned into one.
Unison.
So, and that's what this is. That's why we're here. And I could have easily, when I presented this kind of idea to you guys, it's like, hey, what about if we got you on a podcast show and giving your own way of reaching an audience and reaching your listeners in a different way they've ever seen you before?
Yes.
Building some type of platform also on the back end of it where we're able to do a lot of giveaways, and that's through sponsorship and whatnot. So let's shine a light on this. So that's where the idea came from. And I was like, then we got on the phone and it was like lighting in a bottle.
Y'all got on the phone and then you took it running.
It was like, did we just become best friends?
100%.
In the garage.
There's so much room for activities over here, like I was kicking things around.
This is Randy Jackson, right? That's exactly what it was like.
Yeah, legit. And when you guys, like I said, and we had talked about this before, we already had a plan with the Jesslee Roadshow to take it somewhere.
Yeah.
And then, the universe does its thing. And when you're in alignment and you're living true to you and you're really, positively chasing after that purpose, you usually get better than what you want. And this was definitely something that we didn't even think about. And, you kind of brought it to us out of the blue. And that's just like a perfect example of what the universe can do when you're just living life true to your purpose. Things unfold. Divine synchronicity is real,
Well,
it is 100%.
It happens when it's supposed to happen too, because
timing is key.
There were a couple opportunities for us to try this show.
Yes.
And they didn't pan out for one reason or another.
Yeah.
And there were different iterations of the show. And I come from, like my whole plan for Jesslee when I started managing her was, I'm an old school guy. Like I came up where the way that you touched your fans was a direct one-on-one connection, right? Like I went to college with Eric Church. I saw Church come out here in his first show after he signed a record deal. He played for 5 people, y'all. And like, he's sitting here and I talked to him and he's like, man, I just played for 5 people and I have a deal at Capitol Records. Right. But after that, those 5 people were like, man, we really connected. Then it turned into 25, then 125, then 500. And he was
compound effect.
Playing these little bars and touching people one-on-one. Right. And so I'm going somewhere with this story, by the way. And so when I started managing Jesslee, I was like, this is the way to do it, because she's such a visceral person.
100%.
Right? She's more than just hearing her on the radio. You have to see her. And it's not just that she's gorgeous. You have to see the energy around her, and you have to experience her light that she brings to the world. And you can't do that through the radio. You can't do that through Spotify or Apple Music. Right. And so our idea, like to your point, Chris, was to disseminate her project and her creativity in a method that was more direct to consumer. Right.
Yes. 100%.
And you can do that now. But when I was an artist, when Eric was an artist, you couldn't do the direct to consumer approach because you had to go on tour. So like artists like Jesslee can't necessarily go get a bus right this second because we're not playing Madison Square Garden, but we can still reach Madison Square Garden type people, you know, and to cultivate her fan base that way. So that's been our goal all along, is to reach direct to consumer. And this is a great way to do that. This was our goal, this is our way to do that.
And to really, again, like we've been saying what this show is about, go behind the curtain to who I am as a person and the mission that's aside from music, because I feel like that's just as important as finding an artist that you resonate with their music message. You know, I mean, for me, you know, there's so many artists out there today that are just crappy people, and they are.
Well, they're crappy people because they don't know who they are.
That's right.
Exactly. And that's the thing.
They don't know who they are. They're controlled by a lot of outside sources and what they're getting from their outside, like in their teams, and their publicist is telling them to do certain X, Y, Z. And you see this, and I've interviewed like some really famous individuals, right? And I'm such a blessed individual. But when I meet these people, there's only a certain amount of behaviors and patterns that I identify. Yeah. And I've realized in every single one of them that has a similar story, they become famous, they have a great talent, and then they go into the industry and they has a lot of pressure on them to perform and to do what they need to do, and they don't live their own lives. They have no idea who they are. So when they're famous, they have access to drugs, alcohol, fans. Some get obviously addicted to sex, porn, whatever, I don't know, and then they go down this whole like cycle, and they're spiraling out of control. And by the time they get out of control, if they have a shit like album comes out, then everyone leaves them.
Yeah.
And
now they're in rehab.
For me too, the bigger problem is just that, that's the example today though. I mean, like especially more than ever with social media and stories being able to be disseminated so quickly, information just comes so quickly. You have people idolizing entertainment and media more than ever. And, unfortunately, I say unfortunately because of the amount of examples that are not there today in music, which is something I want to change, is the fact that, so many little children and teens are molding themselves around these people, these entertainers that they idolize. And, more than ever, I really believe more than ever, music is such a huge part of building our culture. And when you have these people who don't really know who they are, they don't really care about affecting anything else than more than their bubble. They're not actively trying to do anything with a value with their music and with their purpose and with their platform. And I mean, that's just, to me, that's kind of concerning because, I know if I had a kid, I would want her or him to be looking at someone that was a positive example and 100%. Be able to know that they are watching and learning from someone who is really going to mold them with some value.
That's exactly right. And it's kind of like the whole Spider-Man thing.
Yeah.
Great power comes great responsibility. And regardless of whether you want the power and responsibility that comes with the role of being a celebrity or not, it's part of it. Mm-hmm. And so, if you're going to create your own bubble, then you also have to have the ability to blow bubbles for other people to create their universe.
100%.
And protect them with that. Because I honestly think that if a little girl listens to one of Jesslee's songs, even the sassy ones, they're learning lessons about how to respect themselves or how not to get mistreated, or, you know, they're not learning how to do dirty dances.
I mean, there's difference,
you know,
there's a big difference between sassy playfulness and then vulgar.
For sure.
You know,
100%. 100%.
Like, there's nothing wrong with being a strong, sassy female and, you know, and an independent individual. But to me, you know, there is something wrong when you're using your goodies to sell your music. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, that's just my opinion, but
I will also look at it, and this is the other angle that I did see with the networks is that, you know, and I was going to I've already kind of mentioned the idea to you, like it was right around Christmas time, and then you had a new album come out.
Yes.
And I have, you know, obviously me being in education and me being corporate America dropout, then went into entrepreneurship, and so many phenomenal things have happened, and I'm such a blessed individual for them. And the only way to receive that, you have to control, to make sure you're managing your ego properly, right? So,
yes.
and that's something that's very difficult. But when I saw their album come out, the whole album was all about inspiring women and inspiring people, and it was just is a phenomenal message. And that's when I shared it with my nieces. But I also, what I did is I tested it out. You probably didn't know what I was doing, but I put it through like remember the email sequence thing I set up through my.
Yes.
So you hit, I think you're around like 20 on the top charts. I think it just dropped. Yeah. And then I put it through that, and I had over 700,000 people within that. And I also mentioned it in a podcast live episode thing.
Yeah.
And right. And then I had obviously people within my community start pushing some stuff. I'm not saying it probably knocked you up, you know, up obviously where you were.
Definitely helped.
Right. But then from there, it went to like top five, went to the top five. I think you were third at one point in that first week. It
was crazy. So what happened is when we actually got in conversation with you and you wanted to reach out and help, I was so amped, and I think it was at 25 at that point. And then, cause it actually debuted at 80. And then it kept going and it kept going and it kept going, got to about like 30 or 25. And then you stepped in, and it ended up jumping, I think that same evening to, it was 15.
And it stayed there
overnight.
And
it stayed at 15 overnight, which is for an indie, that's very, very hard.
That's really rare.
Yeah. The majority of indies, they hit the chart and then they immediately fall off. So the fact that I hit the chart and then I kept growing, that was very interesting. So I don't even know, to be honest with you. I don't know what even got it growing initially. And then when you tackled it, it got up to 15. It stayed overnight. And then we woke up the next morning, and I really don't know what the catalyst was there. But to be honest with you, we woke up the next morning, and then that next day it was like, just kept going. It like stayed at 15 overnight, woke up at 7 o'clock. And then it was like, just slowly but surely, 14, 13. I mean, it literally went like one by one, like every hour it went up a little bit higher.
I don't know if you understand how rare that is, especially with an album. Most of the time, you know, what happens with albums, if you have a pre-sale, is the pre-sale goes on before, and then all those numbers count toward your sales. So that's how people debut on those charts.
Yes.
Right? So basically, most of the time an album will pre-sale a whole bunch because they'll get everybody to go buy it or whatever.
Exactly.
But ours ended up selling more live than it did pre-sale. So what was interesting about the whole entire thing was I had personally never seen it happen that way. Generally, somebody will debut very high and then slowly fall off. And then as they get to about 50, then it's like, poof, they're gone. Right.
For an indie.
But
now the funny thing was too, though, is we were also competing because we have some people with their ears to the ground that are very high up in the music industry. And we were being told that what happened was
that's what this show's about. We're like, we're going to give an inside look. So go ahead. Yeah.
Inside look. So we look back, I'm at number 5.
We won't tell you who it is.
There. Yeah. I'm not going to say it all. I'm not going to say who it is, but we look back, it was 5 different artists too. So it was actually a ton.
All from the same label.
All from the same label. That's how we knew.
Yes.
That's how we knew what he was saying was very legitimate. And it's common. So the labels don't like when an indie artist is outshining at all, because that makes them look really freaking bad. So, and especially having had
on a very deep level, you're looking at a sponsor level, you're looking at an investor level, you're looking at on the marketing side, you're looking at when shit like that hits the fan, CEOs get fired.
Oh yeah. We were making them look like crap. So they started freaking out. and it had been up there. I think it was like second day at number 5, right? So it's sitting there second day, number 5. And all of a sudden, I turned to Steve and I'm like, where the hell did this person come from? This album was an older album. It was not a new release. And it had not been even on the charts. And all of a sudden it shoots up past me to number 2. Then another one does it. Then another one does it. And they're all
from the same label.
All from the same label.
So we had a friend who had been watching, and he's very intertwined with the industry. And he calls us up and he starts laughing. And he's like, you know what's happening, right? And Steve was like, I know what's happening. And I didn't know this actually, but he's like, I know what's happening. He's like, I think they're funneling money into these albums.
Well, Steve and I were texting back and forth.
Yeah.
Where were we at that time? At that time, I don't know. It was shortly after that, and I know that Steve caught on to it.
Yeah. But they're on the phone chatting about this, and he's like, they're funneling money to try to knock her off. And the hilarious part was I would hold number 5, and they'd all pass me, and then you'd see them slowly drop, and then they'd drop under me, and then they'd keep going, and then they'd fall off the chart, and I'd still be sitting there. So it was so hilarious because that's how hard these labels were working. And they did it, 3 or 4 different times that evening.
Well, Jesslee
they'd fall off the chart and then shoot back up again.
She was the only independent artist in the top 200 on the chart.
Yes, I know. Yeah.
The only one, period. And so that should tell you something in the sense that the record industry, it's a paper tiger right